Hi, welcome to this lecture, and this lecture is about your course project. And course project is very important because it will account for 35% of your final grade. Oh, all right, and this is a high time when you should start thinking about it. Okay, so here we go. Let me give you some important information about project. So this will have different stages in it. We'll start with the design stage, but before we even do the design, the most important thing is to come up with a team. So here you're given a chance. If you want to form a project team, you can create your team. Now the maximum team size has been set up to be 3. So if you know if you know 2 other students in the class and you being the third one, then you can form a project team and make sure that you have good understanding. So the best is if you know if your friends are also taking this course, then it will be very easy to form a team. Otherwise, you can reach out to other students. I have shared the information on sign up sheet. You will find the information about other students in the class as well, so please reach out. You can email them asking if they are interested in forming a team with you. So if you're comfortable forming a team, then I'll say, yeah, go ahead, make a team and pick a project topic. And there is a deadline. I'll mention the deadline in the next few slides. So by that deadline, you should have formed your team and you should have picked your project topic as well. If for some reason you want to work alone, you are more comfortable working as a single person, that is fine too. So please go ahead, whether you are single or you are in a team, please provide that information on the sign up sheet. This is important now. We have a deadline for that. The deadline would be given in the next few slides. Now you must be wondering like what the project would look like. So the purpose of the project in this course is to um, demonstrate your understanding of databases that you have learned. So for that thing, you need to pick some decent project, and using that project, you should reflect your understanding of the different tasks which are involved in designing a database application. All right. So what could be the topics, right? So there are a number of topics which you can find, and you can work on those, but the best is pick a topic that you are interested in. So that's the positive thing about this course. The project is not forced on you. The project topic is not forced on you. You can pick the topic that you like the most. So what could that topic be? Here are some examples. So you may design a database that keeps track of the music. Your database could be about music data, where you can find information about different music, the composer, the singer, so on, studio and all that. So it all depends. Since I'm not very good with music, so I don't know what information I should be storing about music. But if I do some research, I'll get to know, like if I have to create a database that will be storing some music data, then I'll figure out, like what would be the important data that I should store. But the best is you pick a topic which is of your interest, and that should be something that you know pretty well. So if you are a sports person, you like basketball, right? So find some data related to the basketball. Or if you are a soccer fan, you like soccer, you can pick the soccer data, right? Do some research, think of making a database that relates to that. So there are so many options for you. So please do a search, and you'll come up with some very interesting projects. But you need to pick the topic right now, otherwise it will be too late. Okay, so it could be about music, it could be about any club. Okay, so it could be even about the business, it could be about movies, it could be about finance database, it could be about food recipes. Look around, it could be about something like Airbnb, right? It could be like Uber. So this is something you have to think about. Think about some topic and please confirm that. Please provide that. Form a team, pick a project topic, and please provide that information on the sign up sheet which I already posted, and that link will reappear in the lecture as well. Now, one interesting thing about the project topic is that duplicate projects are not allowed. So there's another reason why you should act fast. If there's something in your mind, if you have some project idea, then please go ahead and mention that topic on the sign up sheet, because the first come would be first served. Okay, so if you have some idea, please go ahead, check whether anyone else has taken that topic or not. If some team has already taken that topic, then you won't be allowed to work on that. Otherwise, if you don't see anybody who's working on that project topic, then go ahead and mention it, right? So that other team is not picking the same thing that you want to work on. Okay, so the first team to request a project will be assigned the topic. Alright, so yeah. Now the point is, okay, it's a database project. We need some data. Now how much data should we collect? So this is a very common question that the students ask me. So I'll say that let's put some limit on the data size, because if I don't put a limit, then it won't be an interesting database project at all. So uh, as you must have understood by now that in a relational database we store all the data in tables. So let's think about different tables, like how big the table should be. So the range that I'm putting right here is minimum of 10 to 100, right? So I'm putting minimum as 10 for the reason that in some tables in the database it is very difficult to think of data, more than 10 rows, right? But in some cases it is possible to have a lot of data, and sometimes you can get this data online also. Alright, say as an example, if you want to create a project that is based on movie data, right? So from IMDb you can get a lot of data, so you're not constrained by the size, right? If you have a table named movie, there are a number of movies that you can get online, so this minimum 10 is not a problem. But in some cases it is very difficult to come up with even 10 records, right? So for that reason I have kept the minimum as 10, maximum as 100. If you want, you can get more than 100 as well. You won't be penalized for more data. More data is always a good news. Alright, so yeah, when you think about your database, please think about this also, that you have a limit, like how many records you should have per table. Alright, so now the point is, okay, fine, I have some project idea in my mind. I know that I can get that much of data. So how should I enter the data, right? So well, as we have been doing, when you create a table, and assuming that you'll be doing your project on MS Access, you can pull the data from the file, right? So that is something encouraged. If you have, please do that. You should also have some means of allowing the user to enter the data through keyboard. So that is possible to do with the help of the GUI thing that we will learn about. These are called forms. So MS Access allows us to create forms. So in the project you should also create some forms. We will discuss how to create forms in the next few lectures. And you are supposed to use forms also, so that in those tables you are also allowing the user to input some data. Okay, so some data should be key entered as well. So you should have that flexibility in your project to allow the user to enter the records. You will have some record through the files, right? You can, when you're creating the table, you can pull the data from the file, as I have shown you the demos and probably you have done as well. Okay, so that's what we have in the next slide. Like, importing the majority of the data is preferred. So if you are creating a movie database, then I'll say, okay, fine, at least if you have some 20-30 movies or even more, just put that information in an Excel file, and you know how to pull the Excel file is in MS Access for a table. You will create a table, and for that table you'll get the data from that Excel file. So that's something you should be doing. Otherwise, entering the information for 30 movies might take little some time. Okay, if you have patience, perfectly fine. Otherwise, you can pull it up from the file. Now this is how you can impress me by your database. So that means if you could somehow um, store a variety of data types in your database, then that will show that you know the database pretty well. As an example, think of different attributes in your table. If you could incorporate date, that will give an impression that you know how to handle date data type or date attribute. If you can think of some URLs, if you can think of some images. In the past, students have done that. They have created some databases with image information as well. So it will have, if you have different kinds of data in your database, right? So data should demonstrate a range of data types. That's what I'm saying. That will make your project more attractive. So anyway, I believe you'll have numerical data, you'll have string data, you'll have names, you can have address, so you can have numerical and string data type. You should also think of date data type. If you have, if you have, oh yeah, for movies, say you want to store the release date of a movie, so that is a date data type. Okay, so think of all these different kinds of data that you can store in your database. Okay, now the topic should be of a size that its relational data model diagram has. So yeah, so this is another point which you should keep in mind. I did receive some email, I believe, regarding the project size and all, and I asked the student to hold on because anyway, I was working on this lecture. So if you're concerned about the size of the project, and you should be, because that's how I will evaluate your project. So the project should be of decent size. Now the question is, how do you evaluate the size of a project? Is it on the amount of data? Well, not exactly. Data is important. You should have significant amount of data. But the way I will judge the size of your project or a complexity of your project is on the basis of number of entities that you can identify in your project. All right, so the limit is that at least you should have 5 entities. So this is where you should be very careful about the project that you pick, right? So let me take some example here, and we'll see, like, in what cases it will be easier to come up with the entities and in what cases it will be difficult. So if your project is about university, right, we understand university system pretty well, so let's take the university only. So for university, let's see how many entities we can find. And I believe university database would be an interesting one, but it depends, like, who will pick it up. Not more than one team can work on university data. So you have entities like student. Let me see how many entities we can find. Student, courses, course, right, and then you have professor. So we found 3 entities very easily. Then you can have department. So 1 2 3 4 4 we could easily find. Then you can have what, classrooms. So easily I can list 5 entities. So this would be an interesting database to work on. If you spend more thought, you might get even more, right? So let's think about the sixth one. The sixth one could be programs. Programs means undergraduate program, graduate program. So that's another entity that you can think of. All right, so in this case, like university, it is easy to find entities, right? Similarly, if you are thinking of a banking system, or you can think of some entities like for banking, you'll have a customer, you'll have location. So The point is, whenever you pick a topic, make sure that it is easier to identify at least 5 to 10 entities. Right, in the past I have this experience that the students, they came up with very interesting project, which was kind of inspired by the data that they already had. But the problem was that from the data that they had, it was very difficult to come up with the entities. It was basically, the data was pretty rich, but it was just about one entity. So please avoid those situations. All right. Okay, so that's about entities. We know entities are important. We also have another concept which is about relationships, right? So if you look at these entities, then all these entities are related in one way or the other. Student is related with the course, right? Professor is related with the course. Professor teaches a course, and the student is related with course as well as professor. Okay, and yeah, there's another entity that we can think of, which could be transcript, right? Yeah, transcript is a table where we'll be storing all the grades that different students are obtaining. Similarly, you know how these entities are related. Professor is related with the department. Professor is working in a department. Then the classroom should be associated with the professor. Professor teaches in a classroom, and then students, they go to the classroom to attend the class, and in the classroom some courses are taught. So the relationship is also important. So not only entities, you need to think about relationships also, and you should have similar number of relationships, which means the number of relationships should also be in the order of 5 to 10. And don't hesitate. I'm holding my office hours. You can ask me questions in my office hours, or you can even send me an email. We can go over your project idea, right? And I can tell you, like, if you come to me like, professor, this is the project I want to work on, but you know what, I could only find 3 entities, can you help me finding more? I'll be happy to help you. But the only thing is that you need to act fast. Pick a topic, start thinking about it. All right, yeah. Here you have the information about the sign up sheet. This is the link where you need to go and sign up, and that would require the information about your project and your team. So let me take you to this document to give you an idea, like how does it look like. Here it is. This is the link, and you need to provide the information about the team members. If you're working in a team of 3, then you need to provide the name of all the team members, like the member 1, member 2, member 3, their name, and right here goes the project topic. So please provide this information on this sign up sheet, so that I may have the information, like whether you're working in a team or not. If you're only one person, then just provide your name here and leave the other column blank, but do provide me the information about the project that you're working on. You might be wondering, like, you don't know other students in the class, but you're interested in forming a team. Then here is the list of the students, right? So you can reach out to the students using their email to check if there's anyone who's looking for the project partner. So let's go back to the lecture slides here, and all right, so please sign up. This is the first thing you should be doing after watching this lecture. And as goes the other components of the project, there will be announcements regarding those on the blackboard, and all the different components of the project needs to be submitted on the blackboard. There will be a link provided, and you need to submit those over there. Well, if you're wondering, like, how will we ultimately grade your project, so you will have to finally present a project, or I'll say that you will have to give me a demo of your project, and for that I will share a Zoom link with you, and this is going to happen during the final week. So you'll find the deadlines regarding the final project presentation or the demo in this lecture only, but I can give you some very high level idea about it, that your final project presentation, which is in a way your demo, will happen during the final week. Okay, so which will be in the first week of July. Well, I will share a sign up sheet with you where you can pick the time slot that works best for you, and it will be on Zoom. And if for some reason that time is not working out with you, then anyway you can request with me through an email, and I'll try to find out the best time for you which will work for you. Okay, so that's something you have to look into. And please keep an eye on these announcements that I'm posting on using the Blackboard, so that you don't miss any deadline and you need to sign up accordingly. And I'll share the sign up sheet with you, and you will find the link in this lecture as well, so which I do have right here. This is the link where you'll have to sign up for to provide me the information about your team and also the project topic. There'll be other sign up sheets for the final project presentation, which I will share later, probably a couple of days before the presentation schedule. Now let's look into some deadlines which are important and which are coming up. So I believe now you'll be extremely busy with this project, and you should know that this project will decide 30% of your grade. Okay, so this project is worth 35%. Now what you should do, this is the deadline coming up, which is coming Wednesday, 16th of this month. Now what should you do by this deadline? Make sure that you have formed a group. If you're thinking of working in a group, then yeah, you should form a group. And at the same time, you should also decide a topic on which you want to make your project. Okay, so this is required. I showed you the document link on that. Please go ahead and provide me the information about your group if you want to work in a group, and if not, just provide your name along with the topic that you want to work on. So there are so many interesting topics related with the databases on which you could work. Okay, fine. Now once you have decided that, right, once you formed your team, once you picked the topic of your project, now the next deadline would be the Saturday, coming Saturday, which is 19th of this month. So by 19th of this month, you should have some idea about what your project will do. So that idea I want you to communicate to me in the form of a statement. It should be simple English statement which could be max a paragraph. If you want to explain more, maybe you can write 2 paragraphs, but not too detailed. It should give some idea about what you're planning to do. As an example, if you're working on a project which will have the data about movies, then you should say that our database would be about movies, and in this database I will store the information about movies, which will have different movies data, and I'll have the data about the actors in the movie, the genre of the movie, the producer of the movie, director of the movie, the ratings and all that, right? So that kind of statement I'm expecting by 19th of June. So you might be wondering, like, why do I need it? Well, that will be a good exercise. Once you have formed your team, once you picked a topic, then I'm making you think about your database, like what information you want to keep in your database, right? So please do that exercise. Write a statement about your project and upload that on the Blackboard by 19th of this month. Okay, good. If you have any queries, please let me know. You can either send me an email or join me in my office hours. I'd love to have a chat with you. Once you're done with that, now the next important deadline is 22nd of this month. And it is extremely important for the reason that your database depends on the design, like how well you have designed your database. And the design is done using the RDM, which is Relational Data Model. So you need to create that. You have options. Either you can use MS Access, right? Either you can use MS Access tool to create the RDM, or you can use MySQL workbench. We have done this exercise, I believe, in the previous lectures. If you need some help, don't worry. You can join me in my offices. I'll be very happy to help you out with that. So once you have decided your topic and you have some idea about it, you will have to create an RDM. And this RDM is worth 15 points, right? So out of these 35% that you're getting in your project, 15% of that is coming from RDM. So it is so important, right? So please don't miss this deadline. Create your RDM by 22nd of this month and upload that. A link would be provided on the blackboard. Extremely important, carrying 15%. Okay. Alright, so once you have uploaded the RDM, I would like to have a discussion on your RDM. So there will be two presentations in the project. The first presentation is going to be the one where you will walk me through your RDM. Okay, so this will be a maximum 10 minutes presentation by each team, and you will explain to me, and this is going to be a Zoom meeting where I'll encourage all the students to join, and it will be a discussion where you will walk me through your RDM. You'll tell me like why did you design your RDM in that way. And it's a good exercise. I'll encourage you to do it because in this presentation we will have a discussion, and I won't be grading you while you're presenting your RDM. Rather, I will ask you questions, and if I feel that there's something missing in your RDM, then I will provide some suggestions like how can you improve that. So the RDM presentations are going to happen from 23rd of this month. Alright, so I will provide again some sign up sheet. I'll provide some time slots, and we'll see if you can present your RDM during those time slots. If not, then again we'll work it out. You can request for any alternate time, and I'll try my best to accommodate you for this RDM presentation. It will be on Zoom. I encourage the students to participate in this exercise. And what will happen here when we will be meeting for this RDM presentation, the class, that means those students or those teams who are not presenting, are expected to understand the RDM which is being presented by the team. Okay, and we all can ask questions. I can ask questions. The other students who are sitting and watching the presentation, they're expected to provide the constructive feedback as well, right? So let's have that interaction. It's a fun exercise. So that way, what will happen, you will get some the team that is presenting will receive some interesting, hopefully positive feedback, constructive feedback, which if they feel, they can incorporate in their RDM. And RDM is extremely important because that's your design of the database, and after the design, later on you can implement that once I approve your RDM. Okay, so once you have created that RDM, then the next stage, which I'll say is the final stage, would be the creation of the database. So the creation of the database means you will have to create tables to store the data. So we will see, we'll have to look into it like how will we map each entity to a corresponding table. And very often we need to create table for relationships as well, right? So this thing will happen in the last stage, which will be the construction of the table, MS Access table corresponding to entities and relationships if needed, right? So you will be then required to create your database. If you're using MS Access, then you'll be creating your database in the MS Access, where you'll have to create multiple tables. You'll have to see what keys you are going to need, what foreign keys you will need, right? So the keys are needed for any entity table, and foreign keys are needed whenever we have relationships, when we want to connect the different entities, then that is achieved with the help of foreign keys. So these are a few things you'll have to decide or implement in your ultimate database. So there's another deadline which is 28th of this month, and by 28th of this month I want you to submit your revised RDM. Revised RDM is the one where you got some feedback from me or the other teams in your presentation, and if you like that, right, if you like those constructive feedback, if I'm saying okay fine, change the relationship type, have few more attributes, that kind of the discussion, so you can modify your RDM, and once you modify, then that is your revised RDM. So only if you got some feedback from us to revise your RDM, then you are supposed to submit the revised RDM. If I said that your RDM is fine in your very first presentation, then you don't need to upload your revised RDM. Okay, fine. This is the final deadline, which is the deadline for submitting your whole project. So this is going to be the last date of the semester, which is July the 3rd. That happens to be a Saturday, and all these dates, the time that I have mentioned is in the EST, that means the New York time. Alright, so yeah, New York time zone, I would say. You're supposed to submit your whole database by July the 3rd. Okay, and in the final submission, what is it that I'm looking for? Here are the things that I'm looking for. You need to create your database, right, which you will create using different tables, and these tables will have information about different entities and probably some relations as well, or relationships you may say. Now along with these, I also want you to create some more few other things as well, which will be very handy in our database in this project. You need to create forms. Now what are forms? Yeah, we don't know about that right now, but yes, in future lectures you'll learn about what forms are. So forms are GUIs, graphical user interface, and these are the part of MS Access. And these forms are very handy in entering the data in the table, right? So you are required to learn about forms as well, and you should have some forms in your database project as well. So you need to create some simple forms so that it is very convenient for user to enter the data in your database or the table. So that is a requirement. Now when I'll share with you the information about these forms, you would realize that we can create different kinds of forms. So it all depends on your taste, like which form do you want to use. And there is a tool in MS Access, Wizard, right? So using that form wizard, I would say, in Access, you can create different kinds of form. So it is up to you, like which one do you want to create, which one do you like. So from that tool you can create forms as per your taste, right? And you need to decide like which would be a good form for your particular table. Therefore the forms are also required. That is a part of the deliverable for this project. And then once you have created the forms, there will be we do need a report as well, which probably is coming in the next few slides. You need to use these forms to populate the data, right? So what I would recommend you to do is that most of your data, as an example, if you're going to have some 100 records on table, like if you're making a movie database and you say okay fine, I'll keep 100 movies, then for that I'll say that you should upload that data using a file. 100 movies you should enter using a file, because that will be convenient. And then using the forms you can enter one movie at a time, right? So if for some reason user wants to add one more movie to your record, then that should be done using the form. So I would say forms are convenient for inserting few records, not like hundreds of the records. Okay, so then we have this point which says that you should enter enough data so that reasonable queries can be asked and tested. So these are few things you need to keep in mind while you're working on a project, because you will be graded on this date, right? Your RDM will also be graded on this date only, but that doesn't mean that you should not submit your RDM by those deadlines. Okay, so on that day you will be graded on all the different components of your project. Now when I'll be asking you to show the demo, and then in that demo you'll have to show me different queries, and the information about the queries are coming in the next few slides, like what kind of queries you should have, how should you come up with a query and all that. Now, so in order to uh, show the functioning of your queries, you should make sure that your tables have sufficient data, right? So make sure that your table has sufficient data. In some cases it's very difficult to find sufficient data, but in other cases it's very convenient. Like if you're working on movies, finding the data on movies and finding the data about actors, producers, directors should not be challenging. And in the other case, if your data has to deal with health information, then probably you're going to have a tough time gathering those data. Okay, so that's the point. Make sure that you have enough data in the table so that we can test the queries. Okay, now what's this last bullet on this slide? It says that different tables will require different number of rows to be reasonable. This is very practical. Okay, as an example, let's think about the university database. If somebody is creating university database, then you will have entity that represents the student. For university you will have a student entity, and at the same time you can have another entity like departments. Now for student, in this student entity which you are implementing using a student table, it's very easy to think of about thousands of students. In a university we usually have thousands of students. Fine, so you may get that data if it is available somewhere. But a university may not have even 100 departments. I would say probably 20 departments would be a reasonable size, right? But that too, in a very big university, I would assume that they'll have 20 departments. But that's what I'm trying to highlight, that for some tables it is easier to come up with a lot of data with thousands, but for other table in the same database you may have difficulty finding more rows. Alright, so keep that in mind. Don't stress too much about it. Just think about the feasibility, that is it possible to have those many records in a specific table. And these are the questions I'm asking you to come up with. So as you are coming up with your project topic, you should also think of, like, when I'm gathering this data, then what queries my data can answer, right? So as an example, if you're making your movies database, I'll say, can you give me the list of the top 5 movies over the past 10 years, something like that, right? So you need to think, can the database which I'm creating answer a simple query like this? Or list the movies with the highest earning over the last 5 years, 10 years, so on and so forth, right? So these are some interesting questions that you have to come up with, and the questions should look interesting questions, right? The question should not be very simple, like name all the actors in your database. So that is simply a select star from actors, or select star from actor, if actor is a table in your movie database. So you need to come up with 5 interesting questions. These are your 5 these questions are to be framed by you only. Okay, so these questions should be questions for a user of your database that the user might be interested in asking. And then these queries that you're coming with, these 5, you should have English statement for that, and you should also write the SQL statement for that. Okay, sorry about this, I did not intend to cut that off. All right, the SQL statement. Okay, English description and then the corresponding SQL statement, because English statement is not going to run in your database. Ultimately you will have to write your SQL queries, right? So whatever SQL query you wrote to this question by the user, So for 5 interesting questions, they should be first written in English, and then you should be writing corresponding SQL queries which you would need to implement in your database to get the correct answer. And how should we say that this SQL query is interesting? It will be interesting if you are using joins. So I asked this question, like when I usually take the demo, I'll ask like which was the most complex query that you believe you have written, and the user will say, okay, this query. Then I'll say how many joins you had to do. So join is another way of making an assessment like how complex your query was. So if your query involved 3 or 4 tables, then that means you will have to have 3 joins, right? For 2 tables we will need 1 join. For 3 tables we will need 2 joins, right? So that way the number of joins in a query is also a measure using which I can judge whether your query was complex or not. I don't want you to make a really complex query, but decent query, right, which involves a few joins, like 2 or 3 at least. For each question, explain briefly why when the user would want to ask it to the database, right? This is also very intuitive. uh, the queries that you have should be practical queries, right? Don't invent query, and don't try to get the answer to a question which people may not be interested in asking. Alright, so these should be practical queries which a user who is about to use your system will ask. Alright, so for the forms, as I mentioned in the previous slide, that you have these GUIs right here, right? GUIs are there which are used to create the form. So for forms also, there are different categories, and we want you to create at least 2 hierarchical forms. So now you'd wonder like what are hierarchical forms? Don't worry, I will cover that in my lecture. In the hierarchical form, actually we have some 2 forms. One is a parent form, then the other is a child form. I believe, and as far as I remember, hierarchical forms, they come into picture when you deal with the relationships between 2 tables. So maybe one to many kind of a relationship in which you will have one parent form, and then you will have a child form. So you have parent and child kind of relationship between tables. When that's the scene, then you may choose to create hierarchical form. So we want you to implement 2 hierarchical form for your database. Creating forms are pretty easy, so don't worry about that. I will cover that in my lectures. But before that, before you reach to designing the forms and all, there are a lot of things that you can already do, because I finished all those things in my lecture. Now with the forms you have a lot of options available which you can use to make the form look a lot pretty. So it's about your time. If you have time, please spend time and make sure that these forms are looking attractive, those are pleasing to the eye. Okay, so all these things are possible to do, and you can do that, right? So, and this is how you can impress me during your presentation. If your forms are beautiful, look attractive, then yeah, that's a good news. And there's one more thing, which is report. So forms are used in order to interact with the table so that the user can enter the data in a very convenient way. And there is something which is called report. Report also looks similar to the forms, but report has a different purpose. So reports are generated when we want to get some data out of our database and we want to pass it out to some other person or other organization. So reports are not for interaction. Reports are generated to get some data out and share that data in a presentable format. I will tell you about reports as well. There I'll have a class in which I'll show you how to create a report. And as I said about forms, reports are also very easy to create. And the report should be of interest and should be of use to the user. Alright, and the reports are often based on the queries. So you can write report for different queries. Write a query, and then whatever the result is of that query, you can create a report out of that query. Now this is about formatting. Be sure to use appropriate formatting, constraints and validation rules for your database, right? So constraints are something that you can enforce using primary key, foreign key, domains, and there are validation rules that also are somehow linked to the constraints. You need to submit the MS Access database with the forms and the reports as well as the PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint is something which you will be using for your final project presentation. Okay, that thing also you should submit in your project presentation. All these documents should be zipped in a folder, and that folder should be uploaded on the Blackboard. And you should sign up for presentation. I will make sure that I am providing you the sign up sheet well ahead of the deadline, so that you will have sufficient time to sign up and find a slot for presentation. So you should also add these queries in your presentation, like what interesting queries you have considered in your database, and what are the queries that you can test. Okay, so you should have those queries also included in your presentation. These are to be implemented, and these things should also be listed in your presentation, so that it makes it easier to present. So let me add one more point which is missing here. If you are working in a team, then team member contribution should also be there. Team member contribution. So you should say that member 1 did the GUI part, member 2 collected the data, member 3 wrote the queries and all that. So this is something I would prefer to have, so that every team member is participating. Often I had the complaint from the project team that so and so did not work. We were 3 in the team, but only 2 of us worked, the third person did not work. So this point, that team members contribution is important. That way I believe every student in the team would be forced to contribute. Alright, so how will I grade? I will share the grading criteria. So the grades are the grading is done on the basis of the different components. So I'll check, do you have forms or not? Good, you have forms. Do you have 2 hierarchical forms or not? Yes, you do have. So you get full points for the forms component. Then I also check, like, how did you present? How does your data look like? How is your queries? I mean, are your queries good or not? So every component that I have specified in the previous slide would be considered in grading. So make sure that when you're implementing your project, you are taking care of all the guidelines that we have for project. Teammates should participate. Okay, so this point is coming again. All teammates should participate in the presentation. Okay, so another interesting slide which will help you in preparing your presentation. So when you're presenting, make sure that you have all these things in your presentation. You should have ER diagram, then ER or RDM diagram, let me call that RDM diagram you should have. Then you should have information about your tables. It's good to have some snapshot of the tables that you created with some records in there. So while grading, I think, like, are your tables reasonably populated? Do you have that limit which was 10 to 100? Do you have the number of records in each table in the range from 10 to 100 or not? Do you have 5 interesting queries or not? Do you have sufficient forms or not? Do you have 2 hierarchical form? Do you have a report or not? Does your database contains appropriate constraints or not, right? And do you have any additional feature which was not mentioned and you went ahead and implement? Alright, so all these are the things that I'll have in mind when I'll be grading your project. So that's what I have for this video lecture on project. let me know if you have more questions, and please sign up on the project document that I'm sharing with you. Thank you so much.